guys, what's going on? You're listening to TWIG, otherwise known as the flagship of stupidity. I'm, of course, your host, Mike the Birdman Dodd, and hey, it's my motherfucking birthday today. Goo! Me! I'm 38 or something. But I'm not alone. I'm joined by a shirtless man in studio.
Alex, it's kind of warm. There's a lot of cooking going on. It's party atmosphere, so you're going to hear noise and us complaining about heat.
Yeah, my wife is in the background. She is making me a Reese's peanut butter cake. She's also making me dinner for me and Alex. She's going to be making cheeseburger soup, which is kind of a joint birthday between me and Alex.
Yes, that was my promised birthday dinner.
7 months late?
In February.
Yeah. Well, life kind of got in the way.
Yeah, of course.
But, yeah, so we're going to be doing that today.
38. So you're like, I didn't realize you're completely out of the demographic of young people.
Yeah.
You're over 34, so you're just a man.
Yeah,
until you're 55.
Yep, I'm just kind of there, just middle-aged, doing whatever
Well, no,
I am.
You're not middle-aged till you're 55.
Really?
Yep, 55 to 65 is considered middle-aged now.
That's weird. I was considering my midlife crisis would be around 40.
It might be your midlife crisis.
So, yeah, depending on how things go.
Big guys don't usually make it past 80-something.
I'm hoping for significantly longer
John
life.
Goodman's our one where we're like, come on, you're like in your late 60s, make it to 90. Do it, buddy.
I'm trying to think of what else to talk about today. So, yeah, I turned 38 years old. I've been receiving lots of love across Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. So, big thank you to everybody across those social platforms who wished me a happy birthday. I got a wonderful gift from my friend Shannon. I got a awesome Stay Puft Marshmallow Man figure. Alex gave me a kitty cape for Wiley.
Which is hilarious because he puts it on and he decides to walk backwards very slowly.
Or fall over. And
just it's an instant turns the cat off button.
Yeah, it's kind of cute. So I've posted pictures of that on my Instagram and my Twitter. I think their Instagram is kitties.capes or something.
It's kitties with capes.
Yeah, something like that. Something pretty easy.
And the other thing was the
Proto Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got me the Proto Men's mini movie for Light Up the Night, which came out a couple of years ago. So now I have it in full Blu-ray quality in surround sound. So looking forward to... Actually, have you watched it before?
Nope, never.
Then we are doing that tonight because it's quite awesome.
Yeah, I think I was reading it's the first and only release of their music that's been done in surround sound.
Yes, so it's going to sound pretty goddamn amazing. I'm really looking forward to checking that out. And then I got some other little trinkets as well. Blair got me, or is getting me, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Lightning Collection White Ranger helmet, which comes out in November. My sister-in-law, Kara, got me Pokemon Sword, which is coming out in just a few weeks. So looking forward to that. And then my parents-in-laws, my mom and dad-in-law, are getting me Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
So basically your birthday lives on for like a month.
Yeah, pretty much, because there wasn't a lot coming out this month that I really wanted. I mean, we got a lot of the games that we're going to talk about. I don't know whether I'm getting 2K20.
Don't.
WWE.
Because that's a review that what you'll make, you might have to... You might damage the relationship with that one.
I kind of already have.
Have you seen the early reviews of it?
No, not yet.
The graphics are like PS2 level. They showed the hair physics and the way things move. People just decide 90% of the time as you're walking to the ring to glitch and get stuck in the ring.
Oh, that's fun.
Like, you know how bad that the Switch port was 2 years ago?
Yeah.
That's every version.
Oh. Good times. And in today's show, we're going to have an extended look at Ghost Recon Breakpoint. We've been playing since launch. I have killed Cole Walker, and I have some thoughts on this game. Oh boy, do I have thoughts.
And I have died the 1,000 deaths.
Yes.
And I am not crazy. I'm not just bad. We'll have to talk about that.
We'll actually kind of set it up for you a little bit later in the show. That'll be our sort of news special right there in the middle. So coming up this show, we're going to be talking about, Blizzard. Man, we've had a really bad fucking week. We're also going to talk about some Venom 2 casting news, which is still fairly fresh, and something kind of cool from director Fred Decker, who you may know from Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps, and lesser-known RoboCop 3. We also have some weird news involving the Filet-O-Fish, of all thing. The Blob is real, and evidently you too can have a basement full of blood and guts. So lots of stuff to talk about on this show. But before we go any further, we always have story time with Alex. And today's story time is of particular interest.
Yeah.
Because it involved the goddamn police.
Yeah. Now, I'll preface the story with earlier in the week, just very quickly. My family we're nice, we're polite, we follow the rules. We also get loud in confrontation if somebody challenges us. And like my mother and grandmother had to get loud at some teenagers who were drunk at the mall because they were threatening them and calling them horrible names that you should never call your elder. And a few days later, actually today.
Yeah, today. Hours ago,
I'm off to the store on my way in to visit Mike to pick up his birthday card because I knew it was his birthday, had his presents, and then went, wait, I don't have a card. And not that we really needed one, but yeah, anyway. So, homeless guy who's like, I don't want to cast judgment like every homeless guy's on drugs. This homeless guy's on drugs.
Yeah.
Like he's on meth or crack or something. Like it's clear he's not.
He's on some sort of something.
He's in a slightly different plane of existence while still maintaining his corporeal form, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Decides to bug Blair for some money, and I'm like, eh. And she says no, and he swears or whatever, moves away. I get out of the car, go into the store to pick up the card. Get partway there, and he starts talking to me, but I'm just not paying attention. Usually, you just ignore those people and walk away. And then he's like, hey, you fat fuck, you got money? And I'm like, what? Turn around, and then he's like, you're not giving me money? Fuck you, you fat fuck. And then stuff about me being a part of the women's
agenda.
The world women's agenda and
corporate American greed.
Corporate American greed. You're acting like an American, act like a Canadian. And I said, do I have to call the cops? And just matter of fact to him. And he says, what? You can't fight your own fights? I'll fucking fight you, you fat fuck. I'll fucking kill you. And he said it a few times that he's going to kill me. So my response, he's looking at me, hand out still with expecting money. And I immediately burst out in laughter, hysterical, manic laughter at him and point at him. And, he freaks out and runs away. So we go into the store and then they're like, yeah, we're already calling the cops. So I left my number in case I have to give a statement. They didn't call, but from what I hear, we heard that he was harassing people walking up to their cars, even older people, trying to get food from them. Went up to people at the liquor store and was trying to get beer from them, threatening them when they wouldn't give them what he wanted. And I wasn't afraid of him because he was a scrawny, cracked out looking dude, and I could beat him up. But I was more worried, to me, I don't even live in this town. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. But I was more worried that he was walking into stores harassing people. And also, once he starts uttering death threats, it's more than just the cops would come in and take him away. Once he offers a challenge and a death threat, that means he can at least be arrested. Mm-hmm. And I was more worried because in that parking lot, there's a lot of old people that go to and there's people in wheelchairs and stuff. So I was like, he could cold cock an old lady and take her purse easily. Not me. I would have cracked his head and would have caved it in with one punch. Because this guy was 5'2", 98 pounds because of all the drugs, wearing a winter jacket on a bicycle that he probably stole. And I'm $5 $5 with a cane that I could have easily just grabbed in both hands and just wrapped it around his head. So there was no challenge there. But again, it was scary. That's why I laughed at him. I laughed. If it was a dangerous criminal sort of guy, I wouldn't have done it. But I pointed at his face and laughed at him. And 'cause what's he going to do, right?
Yeah.
But if I had thought he was truly dangerous, I wouldn't have done that, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said about making fun of the mentally ill and the
No, and
downtrodden. But no, this guy brought it on himself.
And again, I don't know. He's not all there, or he is broken, damaged. The second you start uttering violent threats,
all bets are off.
I no longer have sympathy for you.
Yes, because you could have been a threat to the community.
And that's why I was 20 minutes late, because we were waiting for the cops to show up, but then they never took my statement, so we just left my name and number.
Yeah, I got a phone call like, Mike, we're going to be late with lunch. I'm like, why, cops? I'm like, what? And so that was fun. So anyway, now that we've had story time with Alex, let's get into the show we plan to do. So stay tuned here on Twig, your flagship of stupidity. I'm Mike the Birdman Dodd, joined with Alex the producer. We'll be back right after this. Hey guys, Mike the Birdman Dodd here, and today we're looking at Annabelle Comes Home, coming to us from Warner Brothers Home Entertainment on Blu-ray, DVD, and digital. Well, this is the third Annabelle movie where she finally comes home to the Warrens' house, and well, what we get here is, well, of all the spin-off movies of the Conjuring universe, this is probably the best. But that's not setting the bar particularly high, unfortunately. The storyline starts off with a wraparound with the Warrens bringing the Annabelle doll home to their house, where they put it in sort of the artifact room and locking it away. And then it follows their daughter the night before her birthday party, along with her two babysitters, Mary Ellen and Daniela. And, well, hilarity ensues when Daniela goes into the artifact room, starts messing around with basically things that should not be, and you see a bunch of really, really cool monsters, though they're not there for very long. It's more meant to be a haunted house movie, but for some reason a werewolf shows up in this movie, though based upon a real case. I did find out that the Warrens did investigate at one point in their careers. It's got some scares, and the makeup and special effects are quite well done. Especially the ferryman looks really neat. So does the demon. The werewolf, it's no American Werewolf in London, and that came out in like 1980 something. But what you get here is serviceable, but it's not particularly great. The Conjuring movies are at their best when they focus on pure supernatural scares. And what you get here are just a series of cool ideas barely held together by a loose narrative of its one night in the Warrens' house, because they try to keep it to a fairly isolated location. Now, the director, Gary Dauberman, wrote It chapters 1 and 2, so the guy can write, but this is his first directorial debut, and, well, it could have been worse. It could have been a lot better. It's not Annabelle, which was boring as all hell, and not nearly as hilarious as Annabelle Creation for all the wrong reasons. So, to rate this movie, to talk about its special features, there aren't a lot there. There are some special deleted scenes from the movie. There's also a couple of featurettes, not totaling any more than 7 minutes. There's ones on the artifact room and the occult. They talk about the light and the love. But the ones that I focused on particularly were the ones focusing on the makeup effects. Particularly for the ferryman, the demon, and the bloody bride and the werewolf. It was actually played by some really tall, thin guy. So think kind of like the guy who gets inside the Alien costume for the Alien movies. He's like 6'7" and weighs like 130 pounds. Really small guy. But he really fills out this costume with these giant boots and everything. It looks cool. They are interesting there. However, though, because it does feature the wraparounds with the Warrens themselves, with Patrick Wilson and Vera Maglia, I think it is. I probably butchered her name. They're the most interesting part of the Conjuring universe, and that's unfortunate because having them in this movie means, hey, there's a potential for something a lot cooler to happen, and it just doesn't. Is this movie watchable? Yes. Should you buy it? No. This is something you wait for it to show up on Netflix or another streaming service, but I really can't recommend you invite Annabelle to your house this Halloween season. So Annabelle Comes Home gets a, well, just lock the door and hope she goes away from us here at This Week in Geek.
News on the march!
And welcome back to Twig, the flagship of stupidity. I'm still Mike the Birdman Dodd. I'm still with Alex, the producer. This is the news, such as it is, was, and forever shall be, written into the history books. Good, bad, ugly, and more often than not, plain fucking stupid. So Blizzard, suffice to say, they're not having a good week. They had to cancel a major Overwatch event in in New York City for the launch of Overwatch on the Switch.
Which is probably for the best because the game isn't any good on the Switch.
No. Major performance issues. It plays better in handheld mode as opposed to docked. That's telling. And they added motion controls to it from what I've heard. Don't know. Didn't get a review copy. Don't care. However, the main reason we're going to be talking about this today, because obviously we've heard about the controversy surrounding the Blitzchung, who is the professional Hearthstone player who basically said free Hong Kong liberation of our time during an official Hearthstone Grandmaster stream. He was suspended for a year. This was then later reduced to 6 months, but he also had his prize money withheld. Blizzard then said, fine, we'll give you the prize money. However, now the U.S. government is weighing in on this, which is of particular interest. So earlier this week, United States Senators Ron Wyden and Marco Rubio signed a bipartisan letter with support from Representatives Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, Mike Gallagher, and Tom Malinowski, addressed to Bobby Kotick, who's the CEO of Activision Blizzard, over the recent suspension of the Hearthstone player. We write to express our deep concern about Activision Blizzard's decision to make player Nung Wai Chung, I'm probably messing up his name, forfeit prize money and ban him from participating in tournaments for a year after he voiced support for a pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong. This decision is particularly concerning in light of the Chinese government's growing appetite for pressuring American businesses to help stifle free speech. Co-signed by Representatives Ocasio-Cortez, Gallagher, and Malinowski, the letter urges Kotick to reconsider your decision with respect to Mr. Chung. Now,
the big deal here is Cortez, she is divisive in that she's very left-leaning, obviously, and people try to paint her as like, oh, she's foolish, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's too young, she's a woman. You get people that will attack her on everything there, but you have people on like very conservative people, colleagues, people that would normally argue with her about everything, came to her for support on that bill.
Yeah,
because
like,
they're
hey
just like one thing that America gets behind is democracy. Period.
Yes.
So whether or not you believe that, or you're one of the Trump people who are like, no, there's no democracy. There's this. No. America, Republicans and Democrats alike are pro-democracy, period. So this isn't a case of them, one group arguing, I don't like this political party because they're this. I don't like this political party. This isn't that. This is, they're arguing in China for the right to have a voice, period. Mm-hmm. So that, and the fact that Activision is shutting that down, that's alarming for them, even because it's not defensible. Even for Republicans who love money and love making money, there is a point where you can make money, but none of that money is coming back to the states. So they're
Well, it's funny because the NBA recently, I think it was the owner of the Houston Rockets, I think that team spoke out in support of Hong Kong. And China canceled all the Rockets games over there.
Canceled all NBA merchandise. All of NBA. It's done.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're kind of at a point where I'm like, good. Maybe China shouldn't get anything. If they don't want, if they want everything on their terms for absolutely everything, it must always be, then they get nothing. And if people want to argue, it's like, oh, well, then they'll stop making things cheap for us. Then just get it from Vietnam or Korea or anywhere else. It doesn't have to come from China. That's like, well, we owe China a whole bunch of money. Don't pay them. Like, there is a point where it's like, oh, well, it'll lead to war. It's like, well,
it won't, because both sides don't want it.
No, but both sides don't want it. China has done this through intimidation for years, because they're like, oh, they have the missiles and all that. If China attacks America and kills everybody, who's going to pay their bills anyway?
Well, I think it more or less comes down to the economies being so powerful, because China rapidly raised up their lower class to middle class. Well, and now they have a really huge buying power.
But they didn't really. They raised a 1% to super rich, and then left everybody else in the cold.
Well, I'm pulling a lot of my information from a bunch of YouTube videos I've watched. There's a guy I watched named Drifter, and I would consider his videos particularly well researched.
I have family that lived in Hong Kong, that married into the family, And it's gone back like 100 years. People here, okay, to boil it down, people in Hong Kong look down on people in mainland China and did before they merged again in 1997 when the British gave them back, because they were viewed as like not the unwashed masses, but like they were viewed as less than because they didn't have the education.
But this comes down to the extradition treaties and everything.
No, but
right?
but this tension I'm saying stems from 1997. It stems from when they became part of mainland China again, and all their laws changed. They still sort of got to operate for a long time very similarly to how they did. But when you think of like, oh, look at all the movie stars and the culture and everything that came from China. No, that came from Hong Kong. So the movie industry, Chow Yun-fat, John Woo, the director, all these other people, Ang Lee came from Taiwan, which is a whole other can of worms. But most of the directors that hit it big in the 90s here were Hong Kong directors and Hong Kong actors. Jackie Chan, while he did go to, he was from mainland, where did he make it? In Hong Kong, because they had the rule of law and democracy similar to how England ran. And they were much more well educated. There was a middle class and an upper class, and there was all that involved. But it started evaporating in 97, and they started resenting one another. Like people in the mainland were like, why do they have it better than we have it? And then people in Hong Kong are like, we want it the way it used to be. They wanted to be owned by England. They wanted to be separate. They didn't want to be joined by China because they didn't want to lose their autonomy. And it started to boil down to now we're 2 generations in. And there are kids there in Hong Kong that have it worse than their parents did. And so then they can visually see it because of media and phones and everything. So you have them, and it's basically a whole young generation fighting back. And then the rest of China trying to impose the way that they've done for the last 100 years, or 70 years.
Because they're trying to impose the Communist Party's
ideals. They
ideals.
still won't admit Tiananmen Square happened, even though there's evidence from every which way.
Yeah, and now part of this, too, is a lot of American companies are bending the knee, so to speak. I know parts of anything on TikTok that mentions Tiananmen Square is now banned. Nike's banned things.
Yeah, like there's and they're towing the line because they're afraid of money. But the real deal here is Activision didn't just do what they did. They're not bowing. They're bending over and spreading their butt cheeks.
Well, I think a Chinese company, I think Tencent, owns a very big percentage of...
They own a minority 10%.
Yeah, in Blizzard,
which
which
is minority.
But still, that's not small.
Same with Epic or whatever, but they have no ability to make any changes to the company.
True.
And Tencent and H Brothers is the other big film company there. They're the ones that made that Gemini Man movie. That sucks. And like a lot of the movies that you notice now are pandering to them. Every movie that they make, a big budget movie now that comes out.
I think the biggest example I can think of personally was Transformers: Age of Extinction.
Yes, any of the Fast and Furious, all these ones, they have to cast somebody from mainland China, or the Megalodon movie.
Yeah.
Has to have, a Chinese actress. Why? Even if it has no relevance to the plot, it has to have her or a guy, and they have to be important, and they have to be good, and they have to make China look good. Everything has to be good China best. And you can tell when the scripts have been tampered with. And it's happening more and more now, and it's coming to a head with this too, because they're expanding more and more. Because China had a law, only 5 to 10 movies per year that were American were allowed to be shown in their country. And now it's more, because any movie they produce or have co-production on goes there. But that also dilutes the water and makes everything censored and crappy and generic.
Well, there was something I heard, and I can't remember where specifically it was, it doesn't matter if you're successful in the rest of the world, you have to make it big in China if you want a sequel. Or something along those lines.
It is, well, if you spend more than $50 million on a movie, you have to be successful in China or India. Mm-hmm. And mostly China, because China is, for a big movie, is an additional $200 to $300 million now. When, you know what? Here's the thing. The only way they're going to change is if you just don't offer your products to them at all. If the people have to scramble to get your stuff, and it's like, if you're in demand, they'll have to basically bow and kowtow to you. But they won't, because America has traditionally always bowed to them because they owe them money. But all it would really take is for them to just be like, nope. By the way, we're not going to do any of that. We're going to have everything made back in America again. We're going to work out trade deals with Europe and other places. Yeah, and you're not going to get fuck all. If that happened, it would completely collapse their economy, and they might have to go to war.
I don't think it's that simple.
The reason America deals with them the way they deal with them is because they're afraid of going to war, because they don't want China to go, pay us everything you owe, or we cut you off and then you're dry.
Well, it's a messy situation I unfortunately can't speak too much more about. I don't like this way the situation's going, that's for sure.
Yeah, South Park's been doing a really good job of satirizing them this year.
Yeah. It's just something I don't get. I just don't like to see that type of interference because it shouldn't be that way. To break it down plain and simple, it shouldn't be that way. To change things to a much lighter note,
Winnie the Pooh forever.
Yeah, Xi Jinping doesn't like to be compared to Winnie the Pooh. To talk about Sony for a little bit, Venom 2, directed by Andy Serkis, is coming out, I think, in the next year or two. Tom Hardy, pretty cool. Woody Harrelson is playing Cletus Kasady / Carnage, and they're taking more inspiration from the Maximum Carnage storyline that came out in the early 90s. Well, they've just cast, or they're looking to play Shriek. They're eyeing Naomi Harris. You may remember her as Eve Moneypenny in the James Bond franchise. She started playing the character in Skyfall, and she's supposed to play it again in No Time to Die. So, looking at her, I'm actually just going to show a picture to Alex.
Okay.
You put the special effects makeup on her, give her the white face paint,
yeah.
She'll look like Shriek.
Oh, yeah. Now, my question is, does anybody, it might be off topic, but does anybody even care about James Bond anymore? I'm so tired of Daniel Craig.
He's the longest serving James Bond now.
I'm so tired of him. I didn't like him from the start.
I liked Casino Royale, didn't like Quantum of Solace, and I liked Skyfall.
Skyfall, I found they really bungled the plot, but because it was supposed to reveal that James Bond is
just a code name.
Is a code name, and that's why Connery was supposed to be in it.
Yeah, he was supposed to be the old man.
He turned it down because he didn't like the script. It was well shot. I think the reason I hate it mostly is because I hate Adele. I can't stand
Yeah, I didn't like the song.
Her nasally ass song. Anyway, back to normal. I think it's because there's a lot of movies out there now that are as good, if not better. Like the Mission Impossible movies are basically James Bond.
Because the James Bond always had that mix between gadgetry and realism. And then you had the Jason Bourne movies, which were more real. But I don't know whether Matt Damon can really do those anymore. Because he was looking a little soft around the edges in Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
He's more like Thick Damon. But that's cool. Thick Damon's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, the James Bond movies, they're I don't know what they mean to say anymore. Like each of the ones through the 70s through the 80s said something. GoldenEye had something to say.
Give us a Brosnan farewell Bond movie.
I think
in the modern style.
I think he's too old for that now.
I don't. I think he could. It could literally be he is too old for it, and they're like he gets called. Like have Daniel Craig's Bond get fucking killed off, and that's how you reveal that it is codename.
I wouldn't mind a cameo from Brosnan,
or have him be the first Bond to play a Bond villain.
Yeah, Bond goes rogue. Yeah, that's possible. But then again, I could see people getting pissed off.
Like not have him go like have him just play a villain, play one of the, play like because he could pull it off now.
Yeah,
and and I don't mean like do the
Blofeld bullshit.
No, or the GoldenEye one where it's like it's a former agent. Yeah. Have him play just a random bad guy, and just be like not even reveal who the bad guy is. And then at the end of the movie, he turns around and it's him, and be like, "What?" Break my brain.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to Venom 2. I hope it'll be better than the first. Because the first one didn't draw enough.
Yeah, I still haven't seen it.
It's okay. It doesn't draw enough from any established storyline. It kind of follows Venom Lethal Protector to a certain extent. There are a number of Easter eggs in there.
And I didn't see Suicide Squad either, but I'll have to see it before the next movie. Because I think if they take the tone of Joker for Venom 2... Like if they make it like a serious 70s Scorsese style.
It won't be. I assure you.
Oh, well, then it's going to be probably lame.
No, it'll be a Sony ish MCU type. It'll be loud, but the thing is, it's hard to do maximum carnage. You need Spider-Man. Spider-Man and Venom are supposed to team up to defeat Carnage and have the Avengers, certain Avengers, help to defeat Carnage.
I know he's pretty much semi-retired at this point, but how great would it be to have Cronenberg or John Carpenter do Venom 2?
I don't know whether I could see it.
Think of the body horror of watching Woody Harrelson be driven even more insane by the symbiote.
That would be interesting. That I will definitely grant you. I don't know. Like I'm curious to see what their script's gonna look like. Again, Maximum Carnage was nothing but cameos back in the day, and it was very, very, very violent.
I don't know.
Sony's gonna go. They're gonna have an R rating on it, like Venom was R rated. But was it?
It won't. Yes, but it won't be R rated like Joker was R rated.
Yeah, it won't be that dark. They're going to draw people in. It'll have gore and shit, but it won't be like The Thing.
All I know of Maximum Carnage is the red Genesis cart.
Yeah.
Or the red Super Nintendo cart.
Which is a pretty good adaptation, at least in my 13-year-old eyes, of the storyline. I had the book at one point, and it was a pretty good read, but it was typical 90s Marvel trash. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to it. Speaking of movies, one last story we got to cover this week is, if you remember, writer-director Fred Decker did Night of the Creeps, and he also did The Monster Squad. So way back in the day.
Is that the Thrill Me line from the movie? Yeah, Thrill Me.
Yeah. So he was talking about this. They're talking about maybe doing another Night of the Creeps 2 with the original cast. Specifically, Tom Atkins, the guy who played Detective Ray Cameron.
He's like 80.
Yeah, he's old, but he can still pull it off. Unfortunately, it depends on which cut of the movie you see. Does his character live or die? So he said, I would like to see Detective Ray Cameron become resurrected somehow. And Fred Decker and I, every time we see each other, we talk about that. And he's determined to do a sequel with the three kids and myself. I mean, they're no longer kids. They're in their 50s, but they're still kicking and healthy and looking good. I'd love to do that again.
That tells you something, eh? Like, he goes, well, they're no longer kids. They're in their 50s, but they're kids to him. Like, yeah. They're now older than he was when he made that movie.
Yep. So he says he loves Detective Ray Cameron. If you saw the documentary In Search of Darkness, they talk with Tom Atkins a fair chunk, and they actually shout out Shout Factory and their Scream Factory line of toys. If you got the collector's edition Night of the Creeps, you actually got a collectible 12-inch figure of Tom Atkins.
He seems like a genuinely nice guy.
He's a guy I'd like to talk to, and I've only been familiar with him with Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and
he only
Night
did, maybe 3 or 4 cult classics, and the rest were character actor roles.
He did The Fog. He did Creepshow 1.
No, the Fog wasn't that Tom Skerritt?
No.
Oh, no, Tom Skerritt did Dead Zone, that's why. It came out around the same time.
Yeah, and he played the dad in the wraparounds for Creepshow, where that was literally Stephen King's kid, which I didn't know. Yeah, I'd like to see something like Fred Decker do another thing with the Night of the Creeps. To bring Ray Cameron back, I don't know whether you could unless you brought him back as like a ghost, because in the director's cut of the movie, he comes out fried as a creep zombie, and he falls down dead and the creeps fall out of his head. In the theatrical cut, he blows himself up to kill the wall of the creeps, and presumably he dies in the explosion. But much like John Carpenter did with Halloween 2, though it wasn't John Carpenter. Either way, Halloween 2, when Sam Loomis blows himself up next to Michael Myers, he gets a few scars on his face, he's still alive. So it's Hollywood. You can do what you want if you have a strong enough script, if you want to pull it off. I'm all for bringing back old franchises, and The Creeps is a franchise I think that does deserve a second shot. It's one of the best ones of the 80s, in my opinion. Fred Decker is underappreciated, and I think he deserves another shot at the director's chair, especially before Tom Atkins gets too old to do it. So maybe Ray Cameron comes back, he's a clone or something.
Or he's been, the scientists grab him and they basically
resurrect him.
He was gooped back together or something.
Yeah, so fully willing to see what could happen with this. So anyway, that's what we have for news for you this week. So me and Alex are going to jump into an extended review / discussion about Ubisoft's Ghost Recon Breakpoint on the Xbox and the Xbox One X. We'll be back, guys, right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
I am a ghost, an elite soldier. Trained to strike my enemies before they know I exist. Death stalks me, but I survive.
We are talking about Ghost Recon Breakpoint on the Xbox One and the Xbox One X. This game has been reviewed by Alex and myself. A review code was provided to Alex and myself from the developer. Okay, so Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Where do I start with this game?
You want me to start, like, basically, just to give some background, we do have two different systems. So Michael's background is
on a launch Xbox.
On a launch Xbox, like a regular, like the vast majority of people have on a 1080p TV, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
I have a 4K TV with HDR enabled for this game, and I'm playing it on an Xbox One X. So basically, the premier platform for home consoles.
Yes, you had the hardware of choice.
Basically, short of having a $2,000 computer, this is the best you're going to get it to look.
Yes. So we played this game. I have played over 22 hours, I believe. I have killed Cole Walker. So far, I killed him at around gear level 130. As of this recording, my gear level is around 152. And Alex, during his playtime, you did not get a chance to kill Cole Walker.
No, I decided to go a different route and do all the main missions, not involving wolves. I only encountered wolves very late on.
Yeah, you did more storyline progression. I did this. My play style was like, ooh, there's a parking lot. There's probably people there that I can kill. Which this game is very open world.
You powered yourself up a lot quicker than I did. I was doing it sort of the way they wanted you to, and I was skipping side missions to see what happens if you just play the main missions.
Yes. So by doing that, my gear score was significantly higher than Alex's. I was also aware early on during the review period for this game that you could pull a Breath of the Wild. What do I mean by that? Well, if you know where Cole Walker is hiding, you can, in theory, kill him from the beginning of the game. There are two ways to accomplish this. If you want to look it up on YouTube, you can do it. But the way I did it is it has a recommended gear score of 150 plus to take on Walker and his base. I did it at gear score 130, maybe even a little lower, I think. But either way, I took out the main boss before I finished the main storyline. And the game kind of didn't care. I broke it in that regard. Events were revealed to me that I had no idea were happening. I know who the main bad guy in the game is now, and it isn't Walker. I'm like, oh, well, that's disappointing. And yeah, I'm still kind of lost as to what the hell happened. But storyline-wise, the game takes place on the fictional island of Aurora, which is, I guess, off the coast of New Zealand or something, near Auckland. It's an archipelago. There's like one big island and several small islands around it, and it has all types of different terrain. There's snow, jungle, grassland sort of thing, and you can traverse this entire environment. It's open to you right from the beginning of the game. Certain areas may have more high-powered enemies than you are maybe equipped to deal with, but you can tackle the missions pretty much in any order you want once you get to the hub part of the world, which is inside of a cave near the beginning of the game. The storyline, it's typical. Think Elon Musk wants to take over the world,
but with like caring and compassion, and then military takes over from him.
Yeah, it's a revolution, and you're like, okay. And it didn't feel very Tom Clancy.
Yeah, do you want to, like, let's get the negative out of the way first, because the game has not reviewed very well anywhere, and we wanted to give it a fair shake by doing as much as we possibly could in the game.
Yeah, like a game I would compare this to and it didn't pull it off quite as well, is Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain.
Yeah.
And that game came out 3 or 4 years ago.
So negatives from me, at least to get them out of the way, because there are positives to this.
Yes.
One, it's very boring. Like as far as
It's very bland.
Like there's not a lot of flavor to the story. It doesn't. It's not compelling. It's play by the numbers. The voice acting is pretty poor for most parts, considering the budget for this game. Walker is a boring bad guy.
Yeah, he's like he's not even the Punisher boring. I'm John Bernthal.
And John Bernthal had no charisma.
He's
in
just
this game.
spoken his gravelly, deep voice.
There's nothing compelling nothing about this game makes you want to see the story further, and it's
a looter shooter with no heart.
Yeah, and it's getting into the mechanics of it. There's far too many menus to have to navigate through.
Way too much time in menus.
Constantly jumping through. It's hard to see what's happening on the terrain. It's hard to navigate your map. There's a lot of multiple layers of menus to go through just to get to one thing that should be a single button press. Mm-hmm. Very poor layout design. It feels like there's a lot of running back and forth on the map for no reason.
They also don't handhold you very well. And what I mean by that, when they offer you a tutorial, they offer you to go through it, or you can skip past it. But sometimes I found this every time I start a mission, it'll always say find blueprints, tutorials done, do this, build this, tutorial done, and it does this every time I load a save.
Yeah, and it also doesn't there are parts that should be not view this tutorial in this random spot. It should be here it is right now where you have to see it. Like I didn't know there was fast travel till 7 hours in the game.
Yeah,
even though I should have known. I did. There's zero explanation done on the offset on the survival mode of picking up herbs and stuff to build yourself perks.
Yeah, or like you can build yourself minor buffs. You can make yourself syringes and everything. The crafting system in this game, you can go through the entire game without having to craft a single item. In fact, by the time I killed Walker, the only items I'd crafted were mines. And that was it. And that's only because I discovered a strategy where you basically landmine a staircase and wait for him to come to you.
There isn't a single compelling NPC.
No. In
Not
fact,
a single one with charisma or a compelling story.
One boss encounter you fight a sniper called Rosebud. She's a wolf sniper who's chasing down survivors. And you go to her base around Lake Burlington, I think it is. And you fight all these wolves, and there's a bunch of armored guys there. There's a bunch of wolves guys there. You fight them, you kill them. And I cleared out the base, and I killed a sniper on a hill. And it just said, "You have killed Rosebud." And I remember somewhere I read, bosses should take more than one hit. You shouldn't be able to one or two shot a boss. Evidently, I did.
Yeah.
And that was I was expecting a confrontation with this Rosebud because she's a former ghost.
And if you fail a mission by accident when you reload it, it sends you far back, and it's a lot of reloading when you die. The load times are not great. Also, this is the first time I'll ever say this about pretty much any Ubisoft major release. The music is bad. It's unremarkable, unmemorable, pointless to the game. You can barely even hear it.
One thing I encountered, and this deserves talking about at least for a moment or two, do not spend any money on the microtransactions for this game. It is pointless. You get enough skill points in the game which you can use to buy blueprints or weapon attachments or different guns, different armor. But if you just play the game, you find incrementally better stuff anyway. Anything you can buy in the shop, you'll find better anyhow. Just go raid a base or something, and you should find it, or fight any of the behemoth tank areas. Which, that's something to talk about. The difficulty spikes in this game are weird, and this is a primary area of concern for me and Alex.
Yeah.
Me and Alex, just before we recorded this review, I played a story mission that he had gotten stuck on. So I played through his playthrough on it, because we just loaded his profile on my Xbox, and he was at gear score 80 or something.
Yeah, for this particular part, I was.
But you were further through the storyline than I was, because I did a lot of screwing around. So during this, Alex got swarmed by drones, helicopters, heavy support guys, and it was a tower defense mission.
It's basically a protect a person mission
for 2 minutes.
For 2 minutes, and it spawned like 6 heavy armored people, 2 helicopters, 2 drones, a bunch of foot soldiers, and some wolves. Probably about 20 enemies or so, and in groups of 5 or 6 at once.
And then what was my playthrough like?
We go, and we die like the 30th time that I've tried. We load Mike's save up. He gets to the exact same part at a higher level, and the enemy should be scaling with you. And he's basically able to sleep.
Yeah, I creamed them.
There were maybe 7 enemies that came at him in total. 1 helicopter, 0 drones, and they also took less shots to kill.
Yeah, I one-shotted a helicopter.
He had 0 armored enemies and 2 wolves.
Yep.
And he was standing in the open getting shot at, and they weren't killing him. And when I was playing, I was getting one-shotted. And so, because I said, hey, Mike, is this a case of me just not being good enough? And we played it, and that's the exact playthrough I was having on mine every time, and random. Sometimes it's 1 helicopter, sometimes it's 2. I had the one time I was killed, it was 4 helicopters.
Yeah, I had 1 spawn in, a couple heavy armor guys, some foot soldiers. I took them out with a few landmines and 1 grenade launcher.
And
shot.
to know, we had our difficulties for this test set both to the easiest.
Yeah, just so we're both on even ground with it. So yeah, that was unexpected.
Yes, and this isn't a case of my character should have been leveled higher. The enemies level with you.
Yeah, like when you do missions, they recommend a certain gear level. I'm way over leveled.
I was 4 gear levels above what it's recommended.
That's another thing too. I found with this, once you reach a certain point in this game, stealth doesn't matter. I John McClaned this game. Because when you equip a suppressor, yes, your shots are silenced. Yes, you're harder to find, but you can sneak around. If you don't have a suppressor, your shots do more penetration. They do damage. They can pierce armor.
Yeah, and the only other thing that we say could be negative on it, because we sound like we're being awfully negative. It's just we're more disappointed in some of the aspects.
We want to front load this.
Yes. The other part is you had issues with textures and graphics.
Yeah, I had a lot of graphics pop in. I had a lot of graphics errors where, sometimes you play a game, you'll see that weird purple that sometimes pop in with graphics. I had a lot of that, a lot of texture pop in. I would get stuck in geometry where I had to reload saves.
You had enemies getting stuck in geometry as well.
Yep, we saw that happen today, and I had missions wouldn't trigger.
Now, on the flip coins, I did not have any of those issues.
Yes.
Playing in 4K HDR on the 1X, 0 texture pop in, anything. Still had bad load times though. And the other thing is, the game is kind of ugly. Like the people's facial animations, the movements, the way they talk, it seems very 7 years ago. Like if this game had come out 6 or 7 years ago, it would have been top tier. But for something that's supposed to be like a AAA title, it looked bland. And even with HDR on, and other games that have HDR look beautiful, it made 0 difference to this game. Like it was not whoever did the art design. It was just a little off. But that could be subjective to our taste. But now that the negative's out of the way with,
let's talk about the positive. I actually had fun with this.
The gameplay is fun.
But the problem is you'll see everything the game has to offer within a few hours.
This is a slow burn game that if you decide to take the next 6 months slowly chipping away at it and you don't care how fast you beat it, you'll have a good time.
Yeah, you can do all the faction missions. There's raids. There is a multiplayer called Ghost War.
You may or may not find that compelling to do, but this is a game where I can pop it on for 2 hours at a time, just have some fun messing around, do a few little missions here and there, as long as we're not encountering major glitches or issues or random AI difficulty spikes, then we're fine.
Yeah, I did have fun with this. I mean, especially the fun came for me when I became so OP the game broke. So that's maybe a little subjective. Like I said, my gear score now is above 150, and I'm tanking enemy bases with a pistol. Yeah,
you're where you are in the game, it's recommended to be 55 to 60.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, eat it. Even today, you saw me one-shot one of those big tank drones with a pistol.
You used a pistol to take down a helicopter.
Yeah,
2 shots.
Shot the pilot right in the face. So there is some fun to be had with this game. It's just other games like Metal Gear Solid 5 have done it better, which is unfortunate because the stealth component, one of the things I do like about this, when you hide in the bushes, you cover yourself in dirt or snow or whatever, you cover your gun in it, and you can lie prone camo. That is really, really cool. I like that idea. I like it when Tom Clancy games, when they do stealth, usually they end up doing it right. But this one, it just didn't. The gunplay is fun. I like the fact that almost no matter what, a headshot is auto-dead. You don't have to worry about, like in the Division 2, enemies become bullet sponges. Here, it's just bam, dead, bam, dead.
There are
at least makes more.
The thing that takes me out of the element is there's too many enemies in this game. For an island that has a small security force, they respawn areas after you've cleared out bosses, and that, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like one of the things that I encountered because I was just screwing around, after I killed Walker, I'm pretty sure the behemoth tank that I killed respawned. So that's a pain in the ass, and I'm never going to the Harrison airfield again.
So it is what it is that way. But here's the thing: bottom line, is it a fun game? Yeah, you have fun with it.
It can be
there. I would say I wouldn't recommend it on a PS4 or Xbox One OG systems due to this game being probably tuned for better specs than what they can support because you've had a lot of issues that you shouldn't have had.
Yeah. If I were to give a recommendation to this game, I'm giving it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
because it can be fun.
I'm giving it a 6.5 to a 7 if you're really into it. I would say, but a 6.5.
I wouldn't go that high.
If you're playing it on PC or playing it on, remember, I played it on the Xbox One X and had 0 technical issues. So 6.5, I would say if you're playing it on like an X or I don't know how it plays on a PS4 Pro, but on an X or a PC that's powerful enough, 6 to 6.5 is probably
I'd also
the most
say do not pay full price for this
game.
No, wait for deep
discount. This should be, it's if for Black Friday or something, if you can get it for $50 Canadian or like $39 American,
if you can get it for, I wouldn't pay more than 35. Truth be
35
told.
Canadian,
or wait for the Game of the Year edition once the year 1 content.
And I'm saying tax included. So if you can get it for $50 tax included, which is what they're not going to drop it to half price, buddy. If not, wait till after Christmas.
Yeah, wait till after Christmas because there's bound to be Boxing Day sales.
And there's bound to be patches for bugs and stuff too. So
yeah,
if it's majorly patched by Black Friday.
There's already been one major patch, which is 7.5 gigs already.
Yeah, so let's say in the next several weeks by Black Friday, it's completely patched to fixing some of the technical issues or some of the AI issues. I would say pick it up if it's $40.
Yeah, I could get $40 all in, but do not spend any money on the microtransactions. You do not need them. You will not need them at all. And as for the year 1 roadmap content, I'll be very curious to see how that all pans out.
Like sometimes I'll say with a lot of Ubisoft titles, like sometimes it's a no-brainer. Like Assassin's Creed, buy the season pass, buy the gold pass, buy whatever you can get. I'm willing to bet that it's going to be similar for like when Watch Dogs comes out. But for this one, this is a hold and wait because you don't know if it's going to have the proper support. Especially if you're playing it on like an original Xbox where you're going to have these kind of issues that you had, Mike, it's not worth paying the extra money.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if you want a comparable experience, like I said, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, you can get that game for next to nothing. But if you absolutely have to play a Tom Clancy licensed game, maybe go back and revisit Wildlands. I know there is some DLC for that game that is a lead into this. So, I don't know. Check that out. That's my recommendation. I'm probably harder on it than Alex, but I used to live and breathe Tom Clancy.
So split the difference, 6.25 out of 10.
There you go.
Stop now, or I shall use more big words at you.
What makes you qualified to be a reporter? I'm willing to violate anyone's privacy for my personal gain and then claim with a straight face that the public has a right to know.
By the hand of Zeus, what manner of deviltry is this?
I love fake alien poop day.
And welcome back to TWIG. I'm still Mike the Birdman Dodd. That's still Alex. It's still my birthday. But let's talk about the weird, wacky, and just plain fucked up things that happened around the planet this past week. And of course, well, McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. What's their saying? Have it your way? No, that's Burger King. What the hell is the McDonald's slogan?
Skidmarinicky Dink McFuck?
Sure. So evidently, McDonald's is serving an Edmonton restaurant a cease and desist over a cod burger. So I'm loving it. That's it. So McDonald's Canada issued a cease and desist to an Edmonton restaurant who was serving a cod burger called the Effin' Filet-O-Fish. Woodshed Burgers received a cease and desist order from the burger giant last Wednesday. The letter warned Woodshed to change the name of its fish burger or risk a court-ordered battle over trade infringement. Getting served by the makers of the Filet-O-Fish came as a shock to Paul Shuffett, the owner and chef at Woodshed, said, "I couldn't help but chuckle. As a small business owner, the first time you open a letter from a lawyer, you always get a little bit nervous. Like, oh gosh, what have I done? But as I started reading it, I couldn't help but chuckle." The letter from a law firm representing McDonald's Corporation and McDonald's Restaurants of Canada said the similarly named cod burgers were likely to cause confusion amongst customers and diminish and dilute the strength of the McDonald's trademark. In an emailed statement to CBC News, McDonald's said the company takes intellectual property copyrights very seriously.
So basically, fuck you, McDonald's. One small guy's restaurant is going to diminish your brand where you have 10,000 locations. This guy, if anything, his food is going to actually help your brand because it probably tastes 1,000,000 times better than your stupid Filet-O-Fish.
Well, it's weird. They're going after a 49-seat restaurant in Edmonton. What's the point? Evidently,
it's not even a chain.
Yeah, it's like whatever. So the Shuffett said, obviously McDonald's has sold a metric ton of Filet-O-Fishes over the years, and it's done well for them. It was never meant to be an insult. It was sort of meant to say, here's our take on this classic. Instead of facing the fast food chain in court, Shuffett has changed the name of his cod burgers and acquired a trademark of his own.
You should just call it the not Filet-O-Fish. Because if you looked at it, he even spelled it differently. So I don't think that would have flown in court, but then again, he'd have to fight it in court.
Yeah, and at that point in time, you'd lose just to attorney's fees. I do not have the wallet or the time or the energy to fight against a giant like McDonald's. I'm sure they could easily bury me if they chose to, but we're not going to roll over completely. After speaking with our lawyers, we've decided it was best to change the name, but we're trademarking the McEffin Fish Fillet.
So now they can't do anything about it.
So now they can't do sweet and fuck all.
McFuck you burger, basically.
This next story is a little bit creepy. So, evidently, a small town in Bagley, Ohio, sits the house of Nick Lestina. And he saw something rather fucked up and disturbing. It's around that time of year where spooky stuff happens. But he woke up to his basement flooded with nearly 5 inches of blood, fat, and bones covering the floor. Evidently, he lives pretty close to a business called Doll's Custom Meat Locker for the last 10 years. And they never had any problems until the literal blood rain that filled Lestina's basement, which he believes is the result of his neighbors dumping the remains of pigs and cows down a floor drain, which is connected to his pipes. I'm going to show Alex a photo of this right now.
Good Christ.
Can you imagine being almost knee deep in the
iron
dead?
And blood?
Oh, yeah. I'd like to know how they're going to fight this. Because I'd be like, you flooded my basement because you were improperly disposing of animal.
They're going to have an inspector come in and probably try to blame the city until it's going to turn out that they weren't disposing of animal remains properly. They're kind of fucked.
Yeah, so it turns out the meat locker's drainage system had backed up during a slaughter, which caused the blood and gore to pour into the home's basement. 2 weeks later, the blood is still seeping into the basement, and the family has had to leave their home. Lestina is working with officials, his insurance company, as well as the meat locker and its insurance company to clean up the horrifying scene. Evidently, the company had said we're taking responsibility for it. It wasn't our fault. We didn't intentionally put blood down there. We didn't want this to happen. We feel for them. I'd be just as mad as they are in their shoes. You fucking think? Like, just Jesus, man. It boggles the mind that you can be that careless to do that.
People are lazy, especially small
businesses.
Old businesses. Small, old, not new ones. Small, old businesses, they don't give two fucks about anything.
So, yeah, I can only imagine the smell. Guaranteed they're going to have some kind of a vermin problem.
So they're going to have to dig up the entire house. Like, that's in the walls.
Yeah. Like bugs and just creepy. Speaking of creepy, so this latest story comes to us courtesy of CNN.com. The Blob. Not the 1988 movie or the original from the 1950s. No, evidently the Paris Zoo has unveiled an unusual organism which can heal itself and has 720 sexes. It's bright yellow, can creep along at a speed of up to 4 centimeters per hour, can solve problems even though it doesn't have a brain, and it can heal itself if cut into two. Meet the Blob. The Blob is an unusual organism which will go on display, went on yesterday at the Paris Zoological Park, and is the first of its kind of an exhibition intended to show its rare abilities. The slime mold, which is officially known as Parisium polycephalarium, or the many-headed slime, is neither plant, animal, or fungus. It doesn't have two sexes, male and female. It has 720. It can split into different organisms, then fuse back together, according to a press release. The unicellular being is believed to be around 1 billion years old, but it first came to the public's attention in May 1973, after a Texas woman discovered a rapidly expanding yellow blob growing in her backyard. The Texas blob died quickly as it had appeared, and the world had all but forgot the peculiar slime until new research published in 2016 caused a stir among the science community. So, evidently, you can find this thing growing in forest floors in Europe. It likes oatmeal. It's its favorite food.
Oh God.
And once it reaches a certain size, it was grafted on the tree bark, which it feeds on. It was then placed in a terrarium where visitors will be able to view it from October 19th. It's creepy. So they normally find these blobs on forest floors in Europe. It thrives in temperatures oscillating between 19 and 25 degrees Celsius, and when humidity reaches levels 80 to 100%. It's almost immortal, and its only foes are light and drought, according to the Zoological Park's press materials, but it can also hibernate for several years when threatened. So,
somebody's going to be a supervillain and splice that with somebody.
I wonder what kind of properties you might be able to gain from this. Like, literally,
I'd like to have
thing.
700 sexes.
I'd like to know the fact that it can solve problems.
Would that be considered a multisexual being?
It would be multisexual. It can think, but doesn't have a brain. How does that work?
It's probably so many small individual cells
working together.
Think Legion from Mass Effect.
Okay. Oh, right. So the more not
a
them there are, the smarter it gets.
A decentralized brain.
So like the Borg. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's weird and scary. I remember in the Blob remake, they said it came from space and it was like a weapons program. Not saying they're going to weaponize this thing, but scary.
Scary though.
But anyway, yeah, go to the Paris Zoo if you want to see the Blob for real, and it won't eat you. And Kevin Dillon will not necessarily come to your rescue with Shawnee Smith. So on that note, we have yet another review from me. I'm not sure what movie's going here, but it'll be a horror movie, and we'll be back right after this, only on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Today on This Week in Geek, we're checking out Crawl from Paramount Pictures. This is a sort of out of left field horror film that came, at a time when everything seems to be the, return of the slasher flick or sort of remake, and this is a completely original monster feature where they wanted to make a movie that made a realistic, enemy, realistic threat that could be horrifying, that could really happen. And what's more terrifying than like alligator, crocodiles coming in to your basement where you're trapped down there in a crawl space, trying to escape while you're basically going to be eaten, every which way you turn. So this was released earlier this year in theaters. I had a chance to check it out, and now I had a chance to check out the Blu-ray, and I can say that they've done a pretty good job as far as adding, extra value to it. There is an alternate motion comic opening for it, as well as about 5-6 minutes or so of deleted and extended scenes, interviews with the cast and crew, all your standard sort of, added features of bonus content for behind the scenes and whatnot. You also get a DVD and digital copy. So as far as adding value for the home video release, they've done a pretty good job there. Now, as far as the film itself, it's one of the better horror films to come out in the last 3 or 4 years, in my personal opinion, in that it's created a sense of terror that you don't normally see because it's something that can really happen. And the CG effects that they did for the actual, monsters in quotes, are pretty darn believable and real. And they did a really good job filling, each of the sets with water and having to find ways to get to higher ground. And it had one of the more satisfying endings because it sets itself up not for a sequel at all, because this is an event horror. There's a hurricane coming in and a family is trapped in their crawl space with a whole bunch of dangers around them. You can be electrocuted. There's wildlife. There's looters, and it does a really good job of building tension. This is presented in its original theatrical aspect ratio with the surround soundtrack, and it's not something that was overly, super colorful. This is a very muted movie. It is also very detailed. There's a lot of attention put into the actual design of the sets and where everything is. Like, you can watch the film and see parts of the props that are going to have to be used later on in the film without it basically telegraphing it to you early on. This is also directed by Alexandre Aja, who you might have heard of before, but maybe can't pinpoint. And it's the director of Piranha 3D, which came out. It's one of my favorite over-the-top gory horror films of the last 10-15 years. And this is a much more grounded, realistic horror. It's in my personal opinion, it's probably one of the top 5 best horror films of the year. And I would highly recommend it, especially on video.
And we are back here on TWIG to close out the show. Once again, I've just turned 38 years old. Wonderful outpouring from the community, like I said, across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm very, very, very thankful. I'm having my friends come down. My sister-in-law's dropped in for a brief little bit this afternoon. And it's been a really good day. Me and Alex are going to watch a bunch of horror movies tonight. Coming up on the site this week, we're going to have a bunch of horror movie stuff. We're recording kind of our thoughts on 80s, 90s horror movies, even the 2000s stuff. We're going to have a couple of commentaries. We're going to record a Twig After Dark tomorrow on Election Day, because what better way to forget our country potentially going down the tubes than by watching
somebody fill somebody else up with tubes?
Yeah, so that'll be fun. We're going to do a couple of horror movie commentaries. So we're going to make them available on Tubi, which is a service which is available in all countries and is free. So you can watch along with us. The one title I'm pulling for is Leprechaun 5 in the Hood, starring Master Auteur Ice-T.
Yes, Detective Leprechaun guy.
So I'm looking forward to that. I actually tagged him last night on Twitter. He hasn't responded to me. I don't know whether he's blocked me or not.
Dude is super chill, into rap and rock and all that kind of stuff, man. He's cool. He'd be like a cool dad or grandpa to have. He'd
be a guy I'd like to interview just about his film and television career.
Didn't he read an entire D&D audiobook or something?
Yeah, he did Dritz de Orden. And I remember he did a podcast and he was like, I'm reading D&D and shit. And I always thought that was kind of cool. Like, wow, you're speaking the language of the elves.
Prototype.
Yeah, Prototype. We're going to talk about what we want to see out of the PS5 and maybe the Xbox 2 or Project Scarlet, as it's known as, which reveals holiday 2020. So get your wallets ready.
Turtle Treasure with a lot of my backlog of reviews. Mostly because I wasn't burnt out, but I was getting to the end of where I can't do any more, because we're at about 3 weeks where I was doing a lot. Also, I was doing travel for different podcasts, going to Toronto for meetings with people for the Roku stuff, doing the convention and all that. And then, last week was the first week where we really didn't have much.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's okay to take a break now and then because it was Thanksgiving up here. There is the syndicated episode of Nerd to the Third up now.
Yep. I know this week on Nerd to the Third, we're talking Halloween stuff. We're talking about supernatural horror movie stuff like The Conjuring, Ghost Story, Poltergeist, that sort of thing.
And syndicated copies of some of the Future Imperfect will be going up, as well as I think Mayhem Mike's. So we're going to be catching up on stuff. So if you missed it on the GCRN, now that it's out, our syndicated version will be up as well. Like I said, Turtle Treasure. There's more we've been doing with. Don't forget the Cambridge Chronicles.
Yep, we just recorded a session this past week. I know the Cambridge Chronicles crew and the Terrible listeners from Terrible Warriors will be doing Extra Life on November 2nd.
Yeah,
to the 3rd.
So our regular Twitch stream will be not doing that. We'll be doing Extra Life. And to that end, Birdman, you know which you're going to be taking part playing a game?
Yeah, I'm playing in a game from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Called Karagami High. So think of anime teenagers with weird powers. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I'm playing 1 or 2, but I'll be doing the ungodly hours because everybody else is tired, and I'll take one for the team and do either the 1 to 4 session or the 4 to 7 session.
Yeah, so
and that's AM.
Yeah, so it's going to be a busy little bit on the site, so hopefully you will enjoy everything that we're throwing down the tubes for you. So anyway, guys, until next time, we have been
Alex.
I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd saying live free or die hard, and as always, be cool, be kind, be careful. We'll catch you next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
Well, that's our show. All right, here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at ThisWeekInGeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at ThisWeekInGeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.